We are live. Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of Deconflicted. It's your boy, Brian Boggs, here to provide perspectives on the three Ds in life: decisions, discernment, decisions, deconfliction. And with me is my man, my partner right here. Speak for yourself, bro.
Hey man, peace to the guys, man. This is your boy Antoine Jarvis, man. Um, man, it's just another great build. Offline has brought us to this conversation online, and I'm ready to get into it.
All right, let's do it. So today we will talk about justice and freedom. Can justice and freedom coexist? So, do you want to
Let me
go with?
kick it off real quick.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
let me kick it off real quick. So I pulled up the definition, right, of justice, and it says justice or just behavior or treatment, a concern for justice, peace, and genuine respect for people. Then I scroll down more and I said, let me go ahead and dig a little deeper than that. It says a noun, the quality of being just, righteousness, and moral rightness to uphold the justice of a cause, rightfulness or lawfulness, or as of claim of title, justness of ground or reason to complain with justice is what I found was a definition of justice. Now let's go into the definition of freedom. Freedom says a power or right to act, speak, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. It says uh, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved is one of the definitions. And it says, when you go under the real definition of freedom, it says freedom is understood as either having the ability to act or change without constraint or to possess the power and resources to fulfill one's purpose unhindered.
Solid. So I find that entertaining. In the Pledge of Allegiance, it ends with freedom and justice for all.
They do.
You know what I'm saying?
They do.
So, but here's the deal: can you have freedom? Can you have complete justice and complete freedom at the same time? And I think it's not possible, personally.
No. Uh, why do you think it's not possible?
It's not, to me. It's not possible because when you're speaking on justice, it's about righteousness and being just and it's basically, it, for lack of a better term, governance, governing yourself and your actions.
Hmm.
Where freedom has no governor. You do as you see fit. Period.
Hmm.
No qualifier. So those are two different sides of a coin in my view. What do you think?
I think it can. Um, the more I think about what I just read off, I feel that they can because at the end of the day, um, for me to have freedom, I could do whatever I want to, right? As long as I don't hurt or injure another party, which is the justice part,
But what is
from
hurt and
my
injury?
perspective. Anything that that a person would think harmed them in some form or fashion. When I think of hurt and injury, I'm thinking a person took a loss. You know what I'm saying? A person took a
Right.
loss in some form or fashion. That is you getting hurt. That is you getting injured.
So this could be
You know what I'm saying?
emotional, mental. Do that fall into that realm?
I see where you're going. Yeah.
You already know where I'm going.
It's because I know you. You know what I'm saying? So because I know you, you know what I'm saying? I see where you're going with that. And yes, it could be. It could be anything. And let's the Kyrie situation, perfect example,
Okay.
right? For a certain community of people, they felt injured by what he did. And the thing about it is, here's the thing: I shouldn't be held accountable for what somebody else did. This is somebody, like he said. I didn't create the book, nor did I create the documentary.
He didn't even comment.
He didn't even comment. He just showed it, right? So this is why I say they can go hand in hand, go together, because ultimately you can't hold me at fault for not directly injuring you. You weren't directly injured by anything that I did. Did you choose to take injury to it? Yes, you chose to, but that doesn't mean I injured you. You understand what I'm saying? That doesn't mean you took a loss by something I did. You chose to say you did, but now because you are saying that that's what took place, now you got to prove it. You can't prove I directly did anything to you to harm you in this situation in particular,
But
right?
but you're bolstering my point.
Well, no, okay. Well, I thought I was bolstering mine because I was saying that they can cohabitate, right?
How?
As long as you don't injure the other party.
So now you're qualifying. And so we can get back to it. I'm gonna stay on the Kyrie Irving situation.
Okay.
So he got suspended. He had a repentance list that he
I seen
needed
it.
to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
for a perceived injury. See, now here's the thing. Only thing you know is what's in your mind and what is in your senses. You do not know how anybody else feels about anything you do. So a person can always perceive injury based upon words, actions, or you do whatever you do. You know, him posting that video to another community, they could have took that as an endorsement, because again, it's the way they interpreted it. They said, okay, he put that on there. He's endorsing this. He's wanting his followers to view this movie, and this movie is hurtful to me. So they wanted justice. We're gonna suspend you. You gotta do all this stuff. That's justice. You gotta repent for what you did. But that's not freedom. Because if he had freedom, he could post it, and no matter how anybody felt about it, there would have been no consequence. If there's a consequence, that's not freedom. See, like when you go commit a crime and you go to jail, you don't have freedom. That's because going to jail is the consequence.
So you're saying you can't have freedom if there's consequences to anything that you do.
If there's a
Freedom can't
consequence,
exist.
right? If there's a consequence to something you do, you don't have freedom, because that consequence is a restriction of freedom, like jail, like a suspension.
Shit, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because technically, okay. And I appreciate that perspective, because now that gave me an opportunity to really reevaluate how I was looking at it. Because, like you said, if if I can get in trouble for something I do, because ultimately, because I was gonna use the narrative, I was gonna use the narrative concept and try to spin it for my own personal benefit. Um, to say, if I control the narrative, if I control the narrative, that's all that matters. You gotta prove it in the court of law, which you still gotta do if we're in a court of law. But the thing about it is, because they're not in the court of law, it's a court of opinion, and because they can control the narrative, because guess what? They own the media outlets. They own the entertainment companies that you're working for. They own the economic, platform that you're operating off of, right? So because they can control public opinion, you are going to get disciplined and get consequences for the things that you do. It's not freedom.
And then also, it's not even about public opinion. It's about the opinion of the people in power. Because if you took public opinion, if you did a poll of the public, I would agree that 51% or better would think there was no ill intent with what he did. And but regardless, but again, that's neither here nor there for the purpose of this discussion, because really what we're talking about is, can freedom and justice
Exist together.
coexist? And they
Yeah.
can't. Like, really, at the end of the day, you got to have one or the other. Even though in our Pledge of Allegiance, it says freedom and justice for all. But
You have freedom sometimes when you're not involving anybody else.
if you don't have freedom all the time, you don't have freedom.
Okay, that's how I'm looking at it. That's how I'm looking at it, because you had just said that you know in relation to freedom, right? In relation to freedom, and this is how I interpreted what you said, right? And I'm going to paraphrase. You know, when we're dealing with the idea of, this is cold blooded. Wait a minute. Basically, hold on, because obviously I'm thinking as I'm thinking as I'm preparing what I'm about to say, but as I'm thinking, I'm like, damn, freedom does not exist.
you get it.
You know what I'm saying?
We're
Like,
the society.
because here's the thing. Because I can give you examples of how I have freedom when there's nobody else around. I could do X, Y, Z, and there's nobody else around. But the idea of saying either you have freedom or you don't, that kind of shuts down the idea of me saying, well, I got freedom to do X, Y, Z when nobody's around. Well, no, I don't. Because ultimately, if there can be consequences for the things that I do, how is that freedom? How do I have the right to free speech, right? But then when I exercise that free speech, it's a problem. And now there's consequences. I can lose my money, right? I can lose endorsements. I got to pay you. I got to apologize. I got to do all these different things, right? So technically, I don't have freedom of speech.
Not in a marketplace. The market determines the rules. See, as a human being, you do. As a human being, you got freedom of speech, but realize that freedom of speech is for you as a person. Now, if you are part of a entity, a marketplace, or a group, association, there's restrictions on your speech.
But I see Kanye got freedom of speech.
Well, yeah, he has freedom of speech, and what happened?
Well, ultimately, he exercised his freedom of speech.
Right.
He lost some money, right? But because he's in an ownership position now, he can say whatever he wants to and not be affected by what these other people. Okay, how I'm looking at it now, and I think you're going to say, if listen, if it doesn't matter what percentage you think you have freedom, if you don't have 100% freedom, it's not freedom.
It's not freedom,
right? It's not freedom. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, with Kanye West, right? He's saying, I'm going to burn all these bridges. I don't need this certain community to put me on and get me there. I'm going to focus on what I already got, and I'm going to do my best to try to help, you know what I'm saying, this other community, you know what I'm saying, move forward, right? And he's been dropping over the years, he's been dropping like little breadcrumbs to where he's at today.
Mm-hmm.
And people can say back when he said slavery was a choice, right? At first, I didn't really understand what he was saying. And then when I thought about it myself, and I really had to analyze the concept of what he's right. He's
It
right.
was, but it was a choice between life or death.
But it's still a choice.
But it's a choice, though. It is a choice, though.
But it's a choice. It is life or death, right?
Yeah.
It is life or death. But it's still a choice,
Right.
right? And so when I look at Kanye and everybody's like, oh yeah, he's not for black people, he's not all that type of stuff. Listen, I'm not looking for no savior. And I think that's what's wrong with the black community. They're looking for a savior. They're making people out to, they're making messengers out to be saviors, and therein lies the problem.
That's not just the black community. That's all communities, brother.
Well, no, I mean all communities. I'm only speaking about my community.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? As of right now, I'm only speaking about my community. But you are correct. You know, there is that savior complex. It is a thing. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's the same thing that they did with Jesus. You know, Jesus. Everybody made Jesus to be God, but Jesus never said God. He said, you know, I came to do my Father's will. I came to do the will of my Father. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I
everybody
got you.
made him to be a savior, and I'm like, this is the problem with us as humans.
It's a
We
human
tend to
condition.
make people, it's a human condition because we tend to make people the savior and the messiah, and as soon as that person is pulled from that environment, now nobody knows what to do. There's chaos,
Right.
right? uh what was that? I'm pretty sure you probably seen it. It's called the Black Messiah, Judas the Black Messiah, or something like
Yeah.
that. When it was talking about Fred Hampton,
Fred Hampton.
Fred Hampton said it best, and he was in a room with everybody, and they was like, "Yeah, you got to run, you got to do this, you got to do that," and he was like, "What?" And I'm gonna paraphrase what he said, right? He basically was like, "Dude, I'm a messenger, right? I'm the messenger. If something happens to me, that doesn't stop the movement."
Right.
And the people in the room couldn't get behind that. They couldn't grasp what he was saying. And I think that's the downfall of all communities. That's the downfall of all movements. If you make it about one person, right? If you make it about one person and something happens to that one person, because I guarantee you there's some people on this earth right now that are looking at Kanye as God.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
if something happens to Kanye in their mind, it's over. I can't pick up I can't pick up the reins that he left behind and keep it moving. Right?
Right.
And I say all that to say this. Damn, it takes absolute ownership, not some ownership, right? It takes absolute ownership, in my opinion, for there to be freedom. If And the reason why I say that, let me qualify that. The reason why I say that is if at any given time somebody else has the authority to stop or slow up my progress, my growth, or my finances in any form or fashion, it's not freedom. So I want to say, can there be freedom? Yes, I think you can.
I ain't
I
saying it
think
can't be freedom.
okay, right. And I'm not saying you are, but I just wanted to touch on this the concept. The more we talk about it, right? The more we
Yeah,
talk about it, the
I
more it
got
gives
you.
me the opportunity to think like there is the ability for them to coexist together, but it
It's not.
requires
It's
absolute.
impossible. It's impossible.
You think?
They can't coexist. They will make you think it can coexist, but they cannot. Because again, if you have absolute freedom, that means there's no consequence for any action. If there's no consequence for any action, there is no justice.
Okay, so if Elon Musk said, you know what I'm saying, Biden doesn't like black people, right? And everybody went crazy, spazzing out. I don't think that will affect him in any form or fashion. Even though you may have your opinion on what he says, I don't believe it directly affects him. Will he still be a multi-billionaire? Yes.
You're speaking of freedom of speech. I'm talking about freedom in
But
totality.
I'm saying, like, will he still have his freedom of movement? Yes.
Oh,
Will
absolutely.
he still
So,
have freedom to do anything and say anything he wants? I believe that he does.
but see, here's the difference. Big difference. Like, let's take the example you use. So, Elon Musk tweets that Joe Biden hates black people, but Elon Musk is a non-black man saying that another non-black man hates black people. People,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. I see where you're going with that. I see where you're going with that. So, and the reason why I can't use, okay, I'm gonna use Kanye. 'Cause I can't think of anybody else that now has ownership of platforms.
And when
Because
Kanye West said
really,
George Bush, when Kanye West said George Bush hates black people, he actually got more popular. He actually got more recognition.
he did. He did,
So,
right? He did.
so
And
it's,
so
it's nuance.
it is the nuances there. It's the intricate details
Yeah,
involved, right? And I get that. And how I look at it is now, because here's the thing. What Kyrie did wouldn't have been a problem to nobody if the people that were offended by it didn't have the level of power that they have today.
I, I don't necessarily think that's accurate.
Okay, well, let me continue.
Please,
Um, the reason why I say that is because controlling the narrative is important in any type of warfare that you go that you're involved in.
I agree.
Any type of warfare that you, for one, you got to have resources, because wars are not cheap, wars are not free. You understand what I'm saying? You got to have resources, which means you got to have money, you got to have bodies, right? And in this digital day and age, when you have money and you have bodies and you have people that's willing to do this right here, they can control the narrative.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And I think
Hold
that's what's.
on.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Hey, keep going. I'm gonna be right back. I left my charger. Hold on.
You good, brother? You good, brother? What I was saying was, um, the idea of the idea of Kanye now owning a social media platform, right? He owns a social media platform. Um, his music, he didn't cross everybody out, so he I don't know if he got his masters or not, but if he's working towards his masters or not, if he gets that, you understand what I'm saying? The whole thing with Adidas and all that type of other stuff is the whole Yeezy concept is his, right? So he's approaching it from 100% ownership, right? Now, are there different ways? Are there different ways to navigate and get into a bag and protecting your assets and all that type of stuff? Yes, right. But I think having the ability to be able to control your businesses, because we all know he's a business owner. He doesn't own that stuff. His business owns the assets, right? He controls it though, and the
Bro.
fact that he has the ability to be able to control, now he's just. And I don't listen. All this is what we see on the internet, right? But it says that he just purchased a social media platform,
Oh,
right?
he's thinking about purchasing Parlor.
Oh, there you go, right? So we think about purchasing that, and I feel this right here with Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, right? That gives you the ability to be able to now control the narrative. With him purchasing a social media platform, Kanye,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm bringing this up. With him purchasing that, he's going to have the ability to be able to control the narrative. Because what's going to happen when he posts things, you're not going to have the ability to be able to block what he's saying and prevent him from saying stuff, right?
Right.
Yes, we're only talking about freedom of speech in that aspect, right? But the reason why I say that to actually double back to in support of what I was saying of they can coexist is when he can control the narrative. You can say whatever you want to, and can't nobody do nothing to you. You can't be harmed or affected by saying or doing whatever you want to do, as long as you don't. Again, as long as I see what we're going to say. You're going to say you're going to say, well, Twan, that right there is not freedom. If you do that and somebody can say they're injured and hurt, that's not really freedom. But from my perspective,
Well, it
shit
might be freedom
is
to
the
do it,
closest.
but
It's
then
the closest thing to freedom in my
right,
head, what
right,
we have access to.
right. But it's
Is it
not absolute
100%
freedom.
freedom?
Right.
No, it's not absolute. Is there a way to have absolute freedom? No. No king has absolute freedom.
Not at
You
all.
step into another king's territory, you know what I'm saying? Now there's issues.
No
Now we're going
president
to
has
war.
absolute freedom.
No person has absolute freedom,
I
right?
agree.
But I would want to say that that's the closest thing to absolute freedom that you could potentially have when you start buying up the media outlets and you start buying up the propaganda outlets.
I disagree with that.
Go ahead, brother. Tell me why.
So here's this is how I want to put this together. So again, because man, I was talking about coexisting,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's freedom
Can
on one
justice
side
and freedom coexist?
and justice on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what one runs between them, the ties that bind them, is cooperation. Because in order to have freedom, you got to have cooperation. In order to have justice, you got to have cooperation. Because, you got freedom. You can have freedom, but you can't have complete freedom. You can't just buy stuff because you need somebody to cooperate with you. Like, you can't buy if nobody's willing to sell to you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It
Yeah, you got it.
requires cooperation. So I think cooperation is the tie that allows them to be in the same vicinity, but I don't believe that they coexist.
So you don't believe that they can coexist at all
It,
at
it, it,
any one time?
they cannot.
They can
Absolute freedom.
independently. They can exist, but not together. Is what you're saying?
If you got absolute freedom, there is no justice. And if you have absolute justice, there is no freedom.
I can see that. I can see that. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because and I'm gonna tell you why it's tough, because we fight for our freedoms every day.
Right. That's why you got to
Right?
keep fighting for them.
And that's what we got to keep fighting for.
You're constantly fighting for your freedoms.
We're constantly fighting for our freedoms, right? And when you say they can't coexist, right? Because if you have absolute this, you can't. Then you don't have this. You have absolute this. You don't have that. Uh, is freedom and justice an illusion?
Now that is the right question.
That's where my mind's wandering also. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I mean, obviously, you know, this. I mean, you and I and everybody that's on Earth are not solid entities, right? When you break it down on the micro level, you know what I'm saying? We're not solid. You look at a table and we think that that's a solid. You hit it, it's solid. But if you break it down on the micro level, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's not actually connected, right? So when I think about,
it's connected.
when I think,
They're called
what you mean?
bonds.
What I'm saying is when you break them down to atoms, right? When you break them down to atoms, huh?
Chemical engineering major.
Right. So when you break it down to atoms, right? I forget what it's called. You may be able to help me with this. When you vibrate at a certain frequency, you can be able to go through. And correct me if I'm wrong. When you're able to vibrate at a certain frequency, this is why you're able to look like you're invisible, if you will,
No.
because you're vibrating at a certain frequency.
No.
Okay, well, let me tell you where I'm going with this, and then you provide your feedback, because I
Okay.
definitely value your feedback on this. The reason why I brought that up, right? The reason why I brought that up is because if we are taught to believe that freedom and justice is a real thing, and it's not, right? It's just make believe imagery that we was taught to believe that we had to keep fighting for, right? Where does that leave us as a civilization if it doesn't really exist?
That's what a
What are we really
cooperate.
fighting for?
Civilization is all about cooperation.
It's all about cooperation, right? It's all about cooperation. So you're saying ultimately, even with cooperation, they still can't exist simultaneously.
They can't exist in totality. They cannot exist simultaneously. But cooperation, like I said, cooperation is the tie that binds. So it goes from freedom through cooperation to justice, back through cooperation, back to freedom, back to cooperation, back to justice. It's a pendulum.
So okay, so it's doing this right here.
Yeah, exactly. You got freedom and justice at two ends.
Never like this.
Never here in
It's
the
always
middle
like
together.
this.
It's always like this.
Interesting. That is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and back to the one thing with the so like on an atomic level, you have covalent bonds that keep atoms together. So the difference between, like, you got solids, liquids, gases, and you can have, let's take water for instance. Water, you reduce the temperature enough, it's ice, it's a solid. Then once the temperature gets high enough, it becomes a liquid. It's free flowing, and then temperature gets high enough, it's a gas. You can't even feel it. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Sometimes you can't even see it.
So, but it's the same thing. The difference is how much space is between the atoms. You said, or the molecules. How much space is between the molecules?
The molecules, right?
So the higher the temperature, the uh,
More
more
it
space that can
expands.
go between the molecules.
Yeah.
Exactly. But they're still connected the whole time. It's still connected the whole time.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Because where I was going with that was playing into the idea of, the third dimensional world that we're in right now. And are we making are we making the decisions? Are we making the decisions for ourselves, or somebody else making them for me? If right, if it doesn't, if it does, if it's really just a figment of my imagination that somebody implanted into my head as really existing. You know what I'm saying? And as spiritual beings, right, as energy beings, right, I don't believe in there's other races. I don't believe in that stuff. I believe that there's only one race, and it's the human race. I don't know why we keep getting caught up and hung up on the whole idea. There's different spectrums of melanin. There's different spectrums of melanin, right? There's different hues. You understand what I'm saying? Uh, and so in my mind, I'm gonna bring it all together, right? I'm gonna bring it all together. In my mind, how I look at it, if we're all connected to this one consciousness, right?
Mhm.
Um, and if that's the case, we're all connected to it. In my mind, how I'm perceiving the idea of this part that goes through between the two, right, is shit. And I don't. There is no real freedoms. There is no, and between the connection between justice and freedom, there is no freedom. Doesn't really exist, right? And we were talking about this before.
Right.
If there's consequences, freedom don't even exist. And so, even when we say individually, can freedoms really still exist, or am I fighting for something? Am I fighting for an ideology that I didn't even put in my head? Because really, it doesn't really exist.
I agree.
You see where I'm going with that?
Hey, that's why I see me when I speak on myself, I say I am free, but I don't say I have freedom. Because in a society, there must be cooperation and governance in a society because the whole thing about civilization is all about behavior. You know what I'm saying? A civilized society, it's about how people behave in that society. You know what I'm saying? Uncivilized means you behave like a barbarian. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really utilize the term freedom much because, again, like I said, I don't believe that you can have it.
Excuse me. By definition.
By definition, you can't have it.
Right.
In absolute.
You can spin it your own way or say, exactly. I have freedom because of this.
Exactly.
Going off a definition.
Going off.
It doesn't. You can say I'm free, and I think
you're free.
I think that piece right there is what caused the confusion, at least for me. I can't speak for anybody else that's going to listen to this.
Right.
But I think the idea of you can be free.
You can be free.
You can be free, right? But freedom, damn, I struggle with saying freedom doesn't exist.
I know, because it's hard because we've been trained. I mean, we've been saying the Pledge of Allegiance since we was in elementary school. Freedom and justice for all. You know what I'm saying? So we think freedom and justice is what we're getting. But the thing is when you're in a society, justice trumps freedom. And if you're operating under justice, you can't have freedom. You might have subsets of freedom, but you can't have absolute freedom.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where it's messing with me as well, because since I was little and doing the Pledge of Allegiance 5 days a week.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? 5 days a week.
It's not education, it's indoctrination.
It's indoctrination. You know what I'm saying? 5 days a week. When I go to a game, I'm indoctrinated to believe I'm required to stand up, put my hand on my heart, and pledge an allegiance to a flag. And that's all I'm constantly bombarded with. And I think that's where the challenge is for me. Because I'm like, bruh, like, this is what we've been told this whole entire time. Right? So now I'm thinking like, well, shit. I didn't put that in my mind. I didn't even put that in my head. Like I didn't even put that. I didn't bring that concept to myself. Somebody else brought that concept to me.
Right.
And now because somebody else brought that concept to me, I'm living with this as if it's reality, and I'm not even making my own decision on that. So that's not freedom.
Exactly.
If somebody can control your thoughts and cause you to think one way over the other, that's not freedom.
It's not freedom. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace.
You know what I'm saying? See, me, when I hear that no peace, you know, they say no justice, no freedom. But of course that's the case. You know what I'm saying? There's no freedom of thought. That no peace is the no freedom of thought. Because when you're after justice, you don't have freedom of thought. because you're concentrated on justice.
Mm, that's a cool game. Yeah, that's a cool game. Because again, this is something that we're bombarded with. And so, and even when we're on social media and we're looking at the news and things like that, just to see what the direction that society is going, right? Um, and I look at the Kyrie situation, and I look at the, Kanye situation, and I'm like, man, like, how, when do we get to a point to where the truth, right? And I don't, me personally, and I'm gonna say this real quick, I'm gonna qualify this real quick. I don't believe, and it's okay if everybody else does. I don't believe you can have it's his truth, your truth. No, I don't believe in that. I believe that there's one truth. You understand what I'm saying? You may have your own spin on it if you want. You may have your own opinion on it, but that doesn't change what the truth is, right? You may say, nah, I believe 1 plus 3 is 4, right? Another person say, nah, I believe 2 plus 2 is 4. The truth is, when you add these things up, you're going to get 4 regardless. You can't get around that, right? So I don't believe that there's different versions of the truth. I believe the truth is the truth, right? So
But
I say all that. Go ahead,
why do
brother.
you say the truth is the truth?
Because I don't believe that. Because what some people will say. Some people will say, uh, walk in your truth, right? And well, that's his truth. You know what I'm saying? If that's his truth, then you know you can't tell him it's not his truth. I'm not trying to tell you it's not his truth. I'm just saying at the end of the day, there is truth, and then you have your opinion. You understand what I'm saying?
I
And I
understand,
think,
but all truth is an opinion, though, right?
okay, let me think about that real quick. All truth is an opinion. All truth is an opinion. Okay, I see where you're going with that shit.
So
Okay,
I pulled the definition of truth.
go ahead.
Definition of truth: the quality or state of being true, that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality, a fact or belief that is accepted as true. See, the thing is, truth,
Accepted as truth is the opinion
exactly.
right there.
Truth is nothing but a narrative.
Oh, okay. The main reason why I brought that up, and going back to the Kanye and Kyrie situation, because it's a conversation I was having with somebody, was that if more people of color had ownership, right, had ownership of, and I'm gonna keep bringing this up like I did earlier, right, these platforms that control narratives, would they be considered anti-Semitic, or any of the shame terms that people are utilizing? Would it have any real ground if these people of color own these platforms?
Uh, I don't necessarily think that the platform uh, is the dictator of what's anti-Semitic or not. And here's what I'll say. Let's take the Kanye West Drink Champs uh, conversation on that Drink Champs podcast. That podcast is on Revolt TV. Revolt is owned by who? Diddy.
I think Diddy.
Yeah. So a person of color owns that platform. They didn't dictate that it was. They showed it on their platform. Other people determined that it was anti-Semitic. Then they pulled the episode.
Uh, and I wanted to let you go to explain that. But I wanted to say I wasn't saying that the ownership will provide what's anti-Semitic or not. The reason why I use the word anti-Semitic is because what I was trying to say is, would they have been deemed anything, and would it still be an issue of today if they own the platforms that people are speaking on?
I don't
It's
think
how I should have put it.
I don't think the owner of the platform is not the determining factor of whether something is considered offensive.
Right. But I mean, like, the idea of controlling the narrative, right?
Oh, so
If you
now
own
you
the
talking about the
platform,
fallout. Now the fallout, the platform definitely controls the narrative.
that's and that's what I was meaning. My apologies
Okay,
for not,
okay, okay. I got you. I got
because
you.
in my mind I'm having a conversation with myself, and I'm expecting you to know what I'm saying in my mind, and that's my fault. That's my fault.
I got you. I got you.
And
Yeah,
that's why it seems like I bounce around, because in my mind I'm literally having a conversation with myself,
right.
right? And I'm expecting you to know what I'm talking about, and it doesn't work that way,
That's why I'm here.
right?
You gotta talk to yourself. Just
Right,
you can
exactly.
openly talk to me. You can talk to me. I do it all the time.
Facts. And
Like a
I
lot of
do it
like,
too. And I do it too. And
yeah,
that's what I was just doing.
most of the time when I talk, these aren't preformed ideas or words. This is stuff
Right.
I say organically as I'm thinking. I'm talking as I'm thinking.
Right. Because I have the freedom to say this. I have the free will to be able to say
You have
this
the free
right now.
will, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I have the free will to say this right now. So my mind is dancing, and I'm expecting people to already know what I'm saying, but I have to qualify that. Yes, the outcome, right? Would the outcome would have been what it is today if these guys owned the platforms that control the narratives?
It depends on the level of outrage.
Depends on the level of outrage. Explain. What do you mean?
So okay, we're gonna talk about the two situations. Kanye's rant on uh Drink Champs. Uh there was no negative consequences for Nori, for the Drink Champs folks. It was their thing where it was said. No negative outcome. No negative outcome for Revolt TV. They just pulled the episode. Now Kyrie, he just sent a text. There was no negative outcome for the league, but the league unhappy with how Kyrie went about uh, explaining himself. Because again, that's the reason why because when they first did it, there was no uproar. There was no uproar. It wasn't until Kyrie held fast and where he stood and didn't do what they wanted him to do, which was apologize. When he chose not to apologize, even though he said, I take responsibility for what I did, I'm not apologizing. I didn't create the movie. You know what I'm saying? Then that's when they said, oh.
That's when the narrative was spun.
That's when the narrative changed, because now it actually, to me, it wasn't no more about the movie. It was about Kyrie being unrepentant. It wasn't even about if he said something. It wasn't about that. It was about Kyrie having the balls, not to mention through all the other stuff that he's done with the vaccine stuff, you know, the not wanting to go play in the bubble. They're like, okay, this guy might be a little bit too free. We got to rein him in. That's my estimation. That's how I saw it. Not saying that it's right or wrong.
Right. That's just your interpretation of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to reel him in real quick so he can trying to shorten that leash, if you will.
Exactly, because it wasn't, because like again, when it happened and when the media started talking to him about it, nothing was done at that time. It was just when they gave him 2 opportunities to apologize and he didn't. That's when they said, okay, we got to do something.
I see what you're saying. So they wanted justice, which was the apology.
Yep.
And he was trying to exercise his freedom.
Exactly. Like I told you, they can't coexist.
Right,
Now you see it. Now you see it.
Man, I had all these notes and everything. I was like, man, they for sure can coexist, man. Like they for sure can coexist, man. But no, not simultaneously.
Nah.
Nah, not simultaneously. That right there is.
It's a constant pendulum, and that's why when you hear these politicians always talking about we're for freedom, we're for freedom, we're for freedom. Like what you I don't think you're for freedom because the Republican Party, they want to control the way people operate in their life.
Mm-hmm.
The Democratic Party want to control how you operate with others. So and they're both, and when you try to control somebody, you're trying to be the dictator of what justice looks like, of what is just. You know what I'm saying? What is just behavior? What is righteous behavior? You know what I'm saying? And if you're trying to dictate what is righteous behavior, that's not freedom.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. So tell me this, right? If let's say Kyrie, for example, right? Kyrie says your justice is an apology, right? But you're trying to infringe upon my rights and my freedoms. So because you're trying to infringe upon my rights and my freedoms, I don't have to acknowledge your justice because that's not real justice to me.
Right. So then that's why they upped the level of justice. They went from, okay, since you didn't like that justice, now you got to give 500,000 to these people, and you got to do these 6 things. You know what I'm saying? Your justice could have been just an apology, but since you don't want that form of justice, how do you like this form of justice?
Let me stretch my let me flex on you real quick.
Yeah.
My power. That you really don't have what you think you have. That's a cold game.
Cold game.
That's a cold game. And I like to operate from a very little ego and very little pride. You know what I'm saying? Because I think when you operate in those spaces, it prevents you from being able to learn, being able to grow. If your main focus is, well, this person is wrong and this person needs to be taught a lesson. This person needs to hear what I have to say. And if they hear what I have to say, then what I'm saying, they can learn my way. And I say all that to say this. I think the idea I think it's important for these conversations to be had, right? And I think it's even more so important for us to do our best to unlearn and relearn what we've been taught all this time. And I think it's okay for us to open our mind ups to both sides of the perspective.
Yes.
To really see, what I'm saying. At the end of the day, we're one freaking race.
Yep.
We both have to live on this damn earth together. You understand what I'm saying? Cooperation, if you will. I think that if we can, but here's the again, if I'm to take that advice and use it, here's the flip side of that. You're not going to always get what you want. So if you're saying I'm one way, I'm not really this way, right? And I'm not really this way. That doesn't mean I have to conform and apologize to you for how you did me when that's really your problem. I'm this, I'm that. That's your problem. I don't have to agree with how you look at me.
I agree.
And because I don't have to agree with how you look at me, I don't have to acknowledge that. So I don't have to apologize to you for hurting your feelings. That sounds like it's a personal problem,
It
not a
is.
me problem.
It's not a me problem.
It's not a me problem. You know what I'm saying? Like the more I'm thinking, because again, the conversations I'm having within my own thoughts, I'm sitting here like, bro, like, don't apologize. Don't apologize. Don't apologize for nothing. Don't apologize for how somebody took a text. Don't apologize for how somebody took the truth, right? Because if we're going to be honest, now I didn't watch the documentary, so I'm not going to speak on it.
I didn't
I'm
see
not
it
going to
either.
speak on something. I'm not going to speak on something I don't know. But I do know. I do know. At the end of the day, we are one race. I do know. At the end of the day, you know, uh, history has been misinterpreted for
It
pay,
ain't
for profit.
misinterpreted. History's made up most of the time.
History, a lot of the times, if we're being honest, you know what I'm
To be
saying.
being
A lot of
honest,
times,
it's
the
made up.
people, the people in power control the narrative.
Think about the Civil War. Everybody knew what the Civil War was about. But after the Civil War ended, the Daughters of the Confederacy, they changed the whole narrative. So what now is the war, Northern aggression, and all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? And they just changed what it was to where it was something less offensive.
Hmm. You know what's crazy? I was watching because they have the Civil War reenactments,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was watching something, and this is off topic, but I wanted to touch on this because I'm gonna bring it back to what we were talking about. Um, I watched the reenactment, right? And it's YouTube. I forget the brother's name, Jaden or Jadon, whatever the dude's name is. He pulled up to this reenactment, right? Number of white folks out, you know what I'm saying, out and doing involved in the actors, right? With all white people. There was like one black dude that I seen that was riding a horse, and they came out. It was two brothers that came out, and it was in slave attire, and they pulled up, and they was like, whoa, 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 like, what are you guys doing, like? And they was just like, no, we just want to make sure that we get history correct, right? Because I know you guys are only showing one side of it, but this side you're leaving out. And so I say that to say this: somebody is always doing their best to control the narrative, and when you control the narrative, ultimately, even if you're wrong, you're right. You understand what I'm saying? Even
You're
if you're
wrong and right.
wrong, you're right, because if you can get people to believe whatever you're saying, now you just swayed everybody to believe this is reality. So now if I'm constantly altering what reality looks like, God, dog, this is such a deep level of mind manipulation that the more I'm talking about, the more I talk, the more I'm realizing how fucked they how cold these people in power are, because if they're able to control how you believe things and how you see things, nobody is ever operating from their own thoughts. Nobody is ever making their own decisions.
Yes.
Every single thing that we do in life or we take in was indoctrinated to us. God, dog.
Why you think TV's free? The money is the advertisements.
God, dog. Because the reason why TV programming
Exactly. It's programming.
Programming, right? The, the TV programming is such easily available to us, right? Is because there is power in brainwashing. If I can control the way you think, I don't care who's in power.
now that now that is something a lot of people don't think about. If they can control the way you think, and I'm gonna tell you, as us as the melanated portion of the human race, they've done a very good job at controlling a lot of way a lot of people think.
Oh, easily.
Yes.
But here's the thing. But they do it in so many different aspects of our life that we're nonstop bombarded with it.
Oh yeah, it's bombardment. It's an
You understand what I'm
onslaught.
saying?
It's an onslaught of misinformation.
Come on, man. It's an onslaught of misinformation. It is. Everywhere you go, I was just looking at something the other day where it said in China, when they open TikTok in China, it's different programming than what TikTok is here in America.
I believe it.
And I'm sitting here like, that is some cold stuff right there, man. Like, how in the hell? But I believe it, right? I believe it. So let's go back to, let's go back to the whole Jew thing and all that type of stuff. I don't know if many people have done their own research, right? I don't know if many people have done their own research of the scriptures. I don't know if people really like to really actually dive into it and actually study.
No.
I think a lot of people just
People like the easy
read,
way.
huh?
Humans like the path of least resistance.
You know what? And I think that's where I was going. Uh, because I was on that same path as well.
Yeah,
If we're being honest, you know what I'm
I
saying? I
know.
was on that same path as well. And as I'm maturing in the way I think, right? And I sit here and because I when I first heard that, they said Kyrie was anti-Semitic, I was like, okay, well let me pull up what that means. I don't know if people actually looked at the definition of that. Let me pull up what that means real quick because the reason why I'm saying this right now in the conversation between is there a connection between justice and freedom is because if somebody can just use a word, right? If they can use a word to trigger you, does that not mean that they can control you?
Nigga.
You know what I'm saying? Like like that is that's where we're at. Why are we not having conversations about that right there? They just used the word and it triggered so many people to jump on board with a narrative that more than likely, if somebody actually researched and looked up what they're saying, they probably wouldn't even agree with the shit that's being said.
Absolutely. I pulled the definition of anti-Semitic for you. Uh, that way, so
Oh, go ahead, please go ahead
so
and read that real quick.
anti-Semitic, hostile to or prejudice against Jewish people. See if there's any additional.
While you're looking that up, he said how they said, do you apologize for saying do you apologize for what happened? He said, why would I feel bad or feel sorry for it when I know who I am, right?
Right.
And that was like the whole premise of the of from Hebrews to Negroes was talking about the Negroes, of America, right? The Black America, if you will, um, are the Hebrews, right? Are the real Jews. So I read a book called When Rocks Cry Out. I got it right here, man. Great book. And if you ever get a chance, man, I would definitely highly recommend getting it. It's called
All
When
right.
Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler. And what the brother talks about, right, is the importance of location, right? When we the difference between a black person and an African, right, is an African knows where he comes from. African's not going to call himself African. He's going to identify with his country,
Of course.
right? And that's something we can all agree on. An African is going to say, I'm a Kenyan,
Right.
I'm a Nigerian.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the reason why location is so important is because the people, Black America has, we don't have no identity,
Well, we
is what
do.
most people would say.
We have an identity. I mean, we have an identity. It's just it's been stolen, hidden, destroyed.
You know what? Thanks for that reminder. That choice of wording is important.
Choice
You
of
are
wording is
100%.
important.
It is important because I chose you because I chose to say we don't have an identity when we do, but like you said, it is hidden from us.
Yes.
It was, and that's how I should have lived. That's okay because I'm not perfect. I don't even try to be.
Exactly.
This the whole idea of us being able to bounce these ideas with each other.
Yeah.
Because I got your back and you got mine.
You already know.
Um, that is a better way of putting it. It's been hidden from us, right? So when we read the Bible, we come across certain terms and things like that. And I'm in this group chat with people I grew up with, and I brought up the idea of corn being referenced in the Bible, right? My partner was like, you know what I'm saying, he's real big on religion, right? You can't tell him anything about religion, none of that type of stuff. He changed his perspective. I'm telling you right now, he changed his perspective once he got this book. But he was just like, bro, like that doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, corn is only indigenous to the Americas. The reason why I'm trying to tell you, um, the reason why I'm trying to tell you it's important because what the Bible, the places in the Bible didn't take place in Africa and in the Middle East. It took place. They took place in the Americas. Now, for most of us, we're not going to that's going to be blasphemy for some people, right? That's going to be incorrect and wrong to some people. Um, but here's the thing about a fact. When multiple people have agreed have shared their opinion that this is the truth, right? I'm not saying that your belief system on Jerusalem being in the Middle East somewhere, right, isn't real to you. I'm not saying that, and obviously I'm not talking to you, but
Right.
uh, I'm trying to tell this brother this type of stuff, and he's still locked on the idea of Israel and Jerusalem and everything being in the Middle East, and I'm like, have you ever thought that they would lie about that? Have you ever thought that when they spoke about when you did your history of the scriptures, right, and you came across pyramids with steps on them, that there's no way that these pyramids that had steps on them existed in Africa, that the pyramids that they were referencing was in the Americas, and he was like, nah. I say all of this to say, if they change the narrative and they change the locations of the people, it's easy for us to be confused about who we are.
You know, Israel didn't exist until 1948.
Facts, facts. And I'm gonna tell you this right here. I'm gonna tell you this right here, because everybody's mad at people in the Middle East fighting Israel for that landmass, right? But what if those people stole that landmass from the people that was already there, and then, like you said, created its own country later on and said, this is Israel. You know what I'm saying? We are the chosen people of this landmass,
Right.
right? In this book, it references the reason why I like to talk about this because we were talking about before the identity. We have an identity, We just been lied to about our identity. We've been called Black African Americans, and everything that doesn't have a national flag, doesn't have a representative or none of that type of stuff. But in this book, it talks about um, Black Americans, right? Black Americans being in the land that the Bible references and that we interpret as being in Africa and the Middle East. I don't really want to do too much talking about it
Right.
because I don't want to take anything from it.
Right.
I definitely highly recommend people grabbing this book because everything I'm saying is going to sound far fetched, and everything I'm saying is just going to sound like make believe, and I'm making some shit up, and
Right.
that's okay. But when you actually grab the book, again, I'm not trying to take anything from the brother, but when you actually grab the book, he actually starts to point out how and why it was so important for them to tell us, you know, you're not a Hebrew, you don't speak Hebrew. It was important for us for them to change our language. It was important for them to take our names from us. It was important for them to sever the ties that we have from the land, right, and from our indigenous heritage. And it goes back to the idea of, freedoms, right?
Yep.
You can't be sovereign. You can't be sovereign on somebody else's land, right? I can't have absolute rule over somebody else's. I can't go to your house and tell you.
You can't come to my house and get the remote.
Right. What was the brother who was the brother Dave Chappelle when he was like when he played Rick James and he was stepping on that nigga
Yeah.
couch, right? I can't pull up and do that without consequences.
Facts.
I can't come into your house like you said and take that remote and start changing the channel. You can only be sovereign on your own land. But
Right.
if you're constantly being bombarded with, you got to go back to Africa. Go back. You niggas need to go back to Africa, right? If you're constantly being taught that, and this is why, again, I say all that to say this and bring it back to this Kyrie situation. Kyrie also, excuse me, found out that his family is indigenous to the Americas,
Yeah,
right?
I
So
knew that.
when you go on his page, a lot of it is about that.
Right.
He even promotes that, right? The reason why I say this book is so important is because it bridges the gap between what we're told who we are and what we really are and who we really are,
But here's
right?
another thing. But I want to add a perspective to that.
Go ahead, add a perspective.
Just a little nuance is
No, I don't mind it.
at the same time, you're being told who you are from someone else as well there.
Facts. But the beauty of it, and you are 100% accurate. The beauty of it is when he provides his sources, these are sources that you can go see for yourself to make the decision. Versus if I'm just telling you something, if I'm just telling you, you're African Americans, right? But there's no evidence in proving that you're African Americans. You know what I'm saying? That's why I say there's a difference because what he's presenting is these are the sources. Go to Peru, go to Mexico and see the pyramids. Go to these land masses that I'm referencing so you can see the stuff for yourself versus I'm just going to tell you who you are. And
Right.
unfortunately, in America, majority of us are not going to think outside the box.
That's
And
a
I
fact.
think this is why what Kyrie did is so damn important. What Kanye did is so damn important. It sets precedents to at least plant the seed to be able to think for ourselves in this concept that they're presenting that we are Jews. At the very least, right? At the very least, it provides an opportunity for us to be able to think for ourselves. Because when you go to church and you've been in church for 10, 15, 20 years, in my mind, why am I still pedestalizing the pastor? In my head, If I've been in this just as much as you, and I have an understanding of this just as much as you, why am I still sitting here and looking up at you? Why am I not taking this information and figuring out ways to free my mind?
Right.
I'm not knocking anybody that go to church. I want to provide clarity. I'm not knocking anybody that goes to church. I'm not knocking anybody, pastors. I'm not knocking anybody that has a belief system. All I'm saying is, just off of the conversation we're having, we don't have freedom over our own thoughts.
I agree.
Somebody else is controlling our thoughts. And I think now more than ever, this is a perfect opportunity for us to figure out not only why they're doing it, how they're doing it, but how to reverse it.
I'm gonna add a little bit more new. I'm gonna add a perspective to it.
Please
Uh,
do.
and this is me. This is how I am. Because I haven't read that book, but I'm gonna check it out. See, I like checking out stuff.
Yeah.
But as you were speaking, in like books like that, and from my perspective, those
Mm-hmm.
books are about justice. You're trying to get to righteousness. You're trying to correct uh, uh, an inequity that was done to you. You know what I'm saying? Would you agree
I
or
don't see
disagree?
it. What?
What
I see where you're coming from. I
yeah.
see where
So
you're
I
coming
mean,
from.
you're when I say you're trying to get to justice, you're trying to,
I
because
see.
all,
I see
all
where you're
justice
coming from.
all justice is about correcting a wrong.
Correct.
And like I never read that book, but I believe that book is trying to correct a wrong. We saying folks have been bamboozled. This is what is more real. This is what is more pertinent from our past. Would that be
And
would that be accurate or inaccurate?
that is no, that's very accurate because that's a perspective.
All right,
That's
so let me
one of the
finish. So let me
perspectives
finish my perspective.
from here.
So let me finish my perspective.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
taking that, when you're focusing on justice, you're missing freedom because again they can't coexist. When you're focused on justice, you have no freedom of mind, and when you don't have, so now your mind is locked on a time that has passed already. Now, I'm not saying that the past isn't important. Please don't think I'm not saying that.
Correct. Right.
But I think the future and the present carry more weight than the past. That's just me, and that's my perspective on it. So, because I used to be a history buff. I love history. I took so many different history classes in college and in high school. Like history is one of my favorite courses. And the more I learn history, the more, for me, it became less important because
I
what
see that. I can see what
what
you're
has
saying.
happened has happened. Just as we was talking earlier, like you said, with Akon talking about Africa, they've gotten past slavery. What has happened. We can't do nothing about what's happened. What we control is where we go next. I like to spend more energy. Now, I'm not saying that to learn your past isn't important. I'm not saying that. I'm not
Correct.
saying that energy shouldn't be utilized to figure out your past. I'm not saying that. But more energy, 51% or greater, the majority of your energy should be focused on your future. What are you going to do next? Where are you going? Because I have a family member. He's and you met him, my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of research. Looking at the past. But in doing that, he he hasn't done what he wanted to do with his life. Because if you're
Right. Because
always looking,
he got stuck in that.
yeah, if you're always looking back, it's hard to look forward. So that's just a perspective I just wanted to share.
No, and you are 100% accurate on that perspective, right? The only reason why I would disagree with that is because I believe that taking a step back to dive into that will be able to provide you with some type of mental freedom. Um,
I have mental freedom.
huh?
I have mental freedom.
Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking
Right,
about
right,
in
right.
general. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I see what you're saying.
I
My,
think
forgive me.
learning this type of stuff, you
Yes,
know what I'm saying,
you're right.
will be able to provide, because of the knowledge that I can get from this,
You're right.
I don't have to dwell on. I can utilize that and say, okay, cool. How can I build off what I know now?
Sometimes you got to look back to find the key to unlock your brain. You're right.
Bingo, right? So that would be the only reason why I would disagree with what you're saying is
And I agree with what you're saying.
because of that concept right there. You know
Yeah,
what
because
I'm
I'm
saying?
speaking from my perspective for how I see life. But again, when I was a youngster, history was my thing. So I guess I
Right.
already went through that period and I unlocked my brain early. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, and some people, you know, what I'm saying, and some of us are still unlocking their brain or unlocking different components of their brain, and I think that, um, like we were talking about earlier, it is important to what Akon said, right? Akon said, for people who don't know our conversation we had, I think Akon made a comment stating that people in Africa, have already the reason why they're able to take off and thrive the way that they are is because they don't think about slavery no more. They're thinking about the future and moving forward, right? And he said that Black America holds on to the past and that prevents us from moving forward. Is there truth in that? Yes. Right? Um, is there a reason? Is there a reason why a Kenyan, a Nigerian, uh, or
a
anybody
Dougian.
from right,
I
right, or anybody? I had to stop because I didn't want to start going through the whole list of all the different
got you.
countries. Um, or anybody from Africa? Would it be the reason why I look at it like this, right? The reason why it'd be easy for you because you still have your culture, you still have your native tongue, you still have all of that type of stuff, right? If I'm over there in Africa, well, to the most
Nah,
part, because I mean, at the end of the day,
the native tongue
you
part.
are you are correct because you are. If we're being honest, they replaced the nation of French.
Colonialism changed the tongue.
Bingo, you are correct, right? But is there an identity of an indigenous footprint in those countries? And there is. There's still certain areas where they have a connection to that indigenous or aboriginal people of that landmass,
Well, we
right?
don't know because we don't live there.
We don't know, we don't live, but I'm just saying, like you have the Dogons, you have there's still tribes that are there that can still give you a taste of the Aboriginal, essence, if you will.
So I'm glad you kind of said that, and we're really going off, but it's a good topic. From my perspective, it seems like a lot of the original tribes are being killed off.
And you're not wrong. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up, right? The only reason
I'm
I'm
just
bringing this
saying.
up is to touch on everything I'm doing is to go back to the whole freedom
Yeah, you think
concept,
about
right?
Ethiopia, you think about Somalia, what happened in Rwanda, you know they were killing off the older tribes.
Right. You see, and again, I completely comprehend that, and I understand what's being said. But the only reason why I said that is to double back and touch on the idea of when you have an idea of who you are, right? It provides the ability to it gives you the opportunity to spend less time running around trying to figure out who you are.
But here's the deal: who determines who you are? The past or your present?
Uh, I would say the past.
I would disagree with you, and I'm about to put you to task for saying that. How dare you say that?
Well,
How
because
dare you say
let me
that?
qualify. Let me qualify why I say that, right? Because here again, I'm expecting you to be in my head having a conversation with me. The reason why I say that, right, is because you got certain communities uh, I identify as this, right? And
I'm
If
talking to
I
you.
say right, and if we're talking about me, I believe the past has a lot to do with who I am, and today has a lot to do with how I view myself has a lot to do with who I
I,
am. I
I,
think there's
I
a
was.
I think there's an essence in both.
I'm gonna just tell you, from my understanding of you, my brother, for me
Okay,
seeing the time we've been together, you know what I'm saying, our friendship, the
right,
brotherhood, you are vastly different than you were before. So you are,
facts.
so the person you are today is determined by who you are today, not who you were 10, 15 years ago.
But I think that the essence of who I was.
But that's not who you are anymore. That's like you
No,
used to
no, no.
be.
It's not.
You used to
Okay,
be a
okay, yeah.
10-year
Okay,
old.
it's
You used
not.
to
It's
be a
not
10-year
who I
old.
am.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's
You
not
think
who
what
I
you
am
did as a
today.
10-year old don't impact what you do today.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You're talking about okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Who I am today. Who I am today. And I
Who
was
you,
I was speaking in general. You were
I,
talking about me in general. I was speaking in general. So I see what you're saying. Yes, where I'm at today is a um it's it's because of a plethora of what I experienced in life and the direction I now want to go with the information I have.
but the past has less of an emphasis, less of a molding point of who you are today, vice of who you were 60 days ago.
Right. And okay, so I thought you had said it has no bearing on who I am today. And
That's
I
not
think
what I
that's where
said.
I got caught up in
I didn't say
it's
no
there's an
bearing.
essence of it, there's an essence of importance of what the past does for me as who I am today, right? And I think that's probably where my not yours, it wasn't
Right.
your misunderstanding. My misunderstanding of what you said came to be was
Got you.
because that's how I interpreted what you were saying.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying? But
Understood.
what, after hearing you qualify your statement, now I hear what you're saying in regards to you are completely right, and that's why I was saying there's an essence of the past that influenced us to either go this direction or this direction, right? Does it hold majority of the weight of how you make your decisions today? No, because now we have new information.
I was just about to say that. You
No,
make
I
your
know, I
best
already know where you're going.
decisions
I'm
off
listen. We
the
agree.
newest information you got.
Right. We agree. And that's why I say, excuse me, and that's why I say the essence of because here's the thing. Somebody else is giving me this new information, right? I'm getting this new information from different sources. You understand what I'm saying? And so this is why I say history is important because for a lost person because if we're constantly getting it from all these other sources and then somebody comes and says oh this is why you can never complete the puzzle because there's 3 or 4 pieces missing and the reason why you can't complete it because these are the pieces that you need here you go right the choice now is mine to either say do I dive back into history again to see if I missed some things so that way I can take them 10 steps forward again because now I have the freedom of not having to deal with somebody telling me who I am, right? Now I can say who I am.
So this is something that how I see history, you know what I'm saying? Being a history buff and now how I am now is especially having been in the Navy and done many, many lessons learned in hot washes. Uh, the only real purpose of history uh, from a productive perspective, something you're going to use to do something with, is to learn from mistakes, to not repeat mistakes of the past. That's the only real reason of history. Because if you're looking at history to revel in the things you did right, You ain't gonna never do nothing right again because you're too busy still celebrating something you did a long time ago, and you're not focused on the next thing you need to accomplish. You still celebrate. When you celebrating, you can't
Right.
accomplish nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
The only real purpose for history really is to learn from mistakes of the past. That's just my estimation. You know
And
what I'm saying?
and I support that. I support that. And to piggyback off of that, if I don't know the mistakes that was made in the past, I don't know what not to do in the future. You understand what I'm saying? So I get what you're saying, right? It's still in my how my mind sees it, right? How my mind sees it is um because if we look at how our current government and country is ran today, it's based off of treaties and the cooperation contracts that was created
That's
between
how every government is run around the
every
world.
government. Exactly, right? And in those treaties, in those contracts, it says certain freedoms that you have access to that you may not even know that you had access to it until you actually learn about them, right? What was the terminology that you were using to you used earlier with me when we were talking about expungements? You said there's
Oh, restorative relief.
restorative relief. Now, see, if 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 I didn't have the conversation with you, right, I would only know what I only knew, which was expungements,
Right.
right? And again, everything we're talking about, even though it may look like we're going like this, it really boils that it goes back down to our freedom and back down to our justices because, and you are a perfect example for this. You know what I'm saying? When you know, when you know what you can and can't do, right? You move totally different.
Facts.
And not only do you move totally different, like certain things don't even apply to you no more. So that's why I'm putting so much emphasis on knowing the history is important because if you know the history, then you will know the reason why the laws are set up the way the laws are set up today, right? And when you know why the laws are set up the way they're set up today, you would put more energy into knowing that stuff, to knowing how to maneuver and get out of certain situations. I don't think we know enough, and you and I talk about this type of stuff, contract law, right? There's a history to contract law and why it is even what it is. There's a thing called a Uniform Commercial Code, right?
Right.
There's codes in these laws that are there that were formed years ago, and we're still using them today, right? And I
There's
think
always
that's
revisions.
where. Say again.
There's always revisions, but you're right.
There's always revisions, right? And I say, and that's why I put so much emphasis on the importance of knowing history because within those history, the people of those times were operating in commerce. They was using contracts. They were utilizing certain economic methods to coexist with each other.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And a
And that's
lot of that is used today, but most of us don't know how to really use, you know, what was already done in the past to our benefit today. And I think that's the goal I was
but
going
this
with the connection of the past and today.
but it's the other part though. Just like let's say we'll take tax law or UCCs or
Hmm.
U.S. code. The law was written. The laws that were written in 1800 aren't the same laws that are applicable today most of the time. There's still some old laws on the books that haven't been revisited. Uh, there's always going to be some of those, but I would say a majority, 51% or better, are constantly being updated with new information based upon the time of today.
Hmm.
So if you focus
New
on
revisions
learning
is what you mean.
laws that were applicable back then and not being focused on the laws that's applicable today, you lose something and you don't never get ahead. because you're operating off of information that is obsolete. It's like having a Windows 95 computer, a Windows 2000, a Windows XP, and the new Windows. I forget what it is. It's on my computer, but it slips on my mind. The newer one is
I
going
see what
to
you're saying.
operate much more efficiently. Everything's going to work with it. All the programs are going to work. You're going to connect to everything. If you get a Windows 95, all you're going to have is a word processor, probably. You ain't going to be able to do nothing else with it. You ain't going to be able to connect to nothing. It's obsolete. So to learn how
I
to
see what you're
utilize a
saying.
Windows 95 computer does you no good.
I don't, and I apologize for the confusion. Um, I wouldn't say that the focus is learning the Windows 95 more so than it is to knowing that there is a Windows 95.
Got you.
Do you know what
But
I'm saying? I think that was the essence of where I was going with the connection I was making from the past to the present is
okay,
when you know that something existed, you know what I'm saying? Not because I never said hold on to, that past.
got you.
When you know and acknowledge, okay, this existed, now we're in real time. I didn't know it existed before. Now I
Got you.
know it exists. Obviously, I mean, there's the Constitution. Even the Constitution has been revised. Each state has its own Constitution.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Um, I think that provides an opportunity for, because again we go back to freedom and justice. I think that you can get justice if you're able to free this. Now, freedom and free is obviously two different things.
Right.
Um, but I think that if you know something that you didn't know was there is now there, you can now in real time see how to utilize that to free yourself. And justice is not really a thing. I'm not me personally. I don't really push for the reparations. I'm not really, and some people may disagree, and that's okay, right? I'm not holding my breath for somebody else to be my savior.
Oh, not at all.
Um,
I think they're due.
that's that's not realistic for me,
I
right? So
mean,
I get what Akon said about
right.
moving forward, and I'm with them on that because I'm not going to live in the past and hold on to that. Listen,
Yeah.
I go backwards and dabble and see what I missed. Oh shit, I didn't even know I missed that. I didn't know that was even there. So let me go ahead and see how I can utilize that in real time because we are on the Deconflicted podcast. You know
Fact.
what I'm saying? And we got to be able to have discernment of, what's being put in front of us, so that way we can make the proper decisions. So that way we can, operate from the mindset of being able to deconflict anything that's brought in front of us.
Right.
Ultimately, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I say it's important to have an idea of what it is, and in real time, let's figure out a way to use this for our own benefit if we can.
Right.
Right? Don't dwell on it. You know what I'm saying? Because if we take too much time dwelling on it, unless you're a history buff and that's where you find the most passion and you don't care on moving forward, then I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if you want to move forward and keep taking steps forward, you got to be able to utilize the information that you came across and figure out how to use that information in real time.
Right. I'm with you.
You know what I'm saying?
For
Um,
sure.
and that's why that's where I was kind of going with that, if you will.
I'm with you. I'm with you, and I recognize it. I recognize it. So I was gonna say, take a strategic pause, come back with part two.
We could do that.
Sounds like a
We could do
plan.
that.
So thank you for your time, people. We're gonna have a part two to this because this is a lot of discussion, and I think it's a good discussion. What you think, brother?
Yeah, because like I said, the part two is gonna go into a whole different direction, but still tie it back to
Yep.
our initial conversation. So I think it's definitely important. Let's do the part two.
Solid. Well, until the next time.
Signing off, man. Peace to the
Signing
gods.
off. Don't hang up. Don't hang up.